And now, it's time for Healing from Within with your host, Tony Valen.
And hello, welcome everyone to Healing from Within. I'm your host, Tony Valen. You can contact me, Tony@TonyValen.com, or visit our website, healingfromwithin.net. Follow the show on Twitter @TVHFW. The show is also available on iTunes and YouTube. Just search Healing from Within with Tony Valen, or look for the Tony Valen channel on YouTube. Joining us on today's show for the second time, evidential medium and intuitive life coach, Mark Troy. You can learn more about Mark Troy by going to marktroymedium.com. Follow him on Twitter @MarkTroyMed. Find him on Facebook /MarkTroyMedium. Mark, welcome to the show for a second time.
Thank you, Tony. It's a pleasure to be here. And happy Saturday to you, too.
Oh, happy Saturday. And just to let the listeners know, we're taking calls today, but we are not going to be doing readings on air. So if you're calling in, please let it be questions about the content and not for reading. And if you want a reading, you can definitely get a hold of Mark, and he'll be glad to set one up with you. So, Mark, let's go ahead and start with the first question I always ask. I'm going to ask again. What are your gifts, and how did your journey begin?
So, my gifts are, I am primarily a medium. So a medium is able to communicate with loved ones who are now in the spirit world, or if you call it heaven or the other side, through sort of a different language, I always say. It's kind of like charades. So we're communicating. Yeah, that's the best way I try to explain it. Like sign language is a nonverbal language. I feel like mediumship is more or less a nonverbal language too. But, every medium is a psychic, so I also have the gift of having a psychic ability where I try to use all the clairs. So I call myself clairversatile.
Right,
so I'm
that's
clairvoyant.
a good term.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe I need to trademark that. I'm not really sure. But, I feel like I've touched on almost I try to have at least, touch on every aspect of what an intuitive is and a light worker. So, being an empath, a clairsentient, using claircognizance, using clairaudience, I've tried to go through all the aspects and try to develop them to some extent, and try to help others too with all that.
So when you talk about talking to loved ones on the other side, it's kind of charades. What exactly do you mean by that? Is that, are you talking about like impressions that they put in your mind's eye, or how does that work?
So yes, and more. They definitely put impressions in my mind, but I'm lucky enough to have what we call objective clairvoyance, which is you can see them as if they're actually in the room sometimes. And and when you get the impressions and you can actually see in your mind's eye, that we call that subjective clairvoyance. So I have a bit of both. Not always I can see every single spirit with objective, like they're in the room, but I mostly can, but at least one out of maybe in every reading. And your other question was, how did it begin? Well, it began with me seeing my grandma, who had already crossed into the spirit world at the age of 3. I was only 3, and she was there, kind of like a hologram, kind of like Star Wars, where you see the. So for me, that was my soul's way of saying, hey, this is how it's going to go for you. And so from that point on, for me, at least at that age, I knew that this was what I was seeing was her, but I knew she wasn't alive. I really didn't know I mean, I was only 3, so I didn't really know what heaven was or what that was all about. But I could feel her personality, but she wasn't saying words. But I could feel her she was always very funny, and it overwhelmed me. So I know, like, I'm talking to this woman, but I'm not using words. I'm using almost a lot of feelings, a lot of knowing, almost telepathy, and all of it was sort of a nonverbal. And that's really what mediumship is like. A lot of people, I think, I don't know if it's because of television or because of their own ideas. I feel like sometimes they believe it should be like a telephone call, and it's and it's nothing like that. It's not like you can get like their social security number, their address, and all these things. They give you what they want to give you as information to help. So
yeah. When you talk about the objective listening, or I'm sorry, what was the term you used? Objective
clairvoyance.
Clairvoyance. Now, when we use that, is that like, in other words, is that incorporating your physical sense with your psychic sense?
I guess so, because I can kind of see it like with as if they're in the room. It's just not. I always say it's just not quite HD. So so like I might not get perfect quality of what their face would look like, and sometimes people are like, why can't you see if he has two freckles on his cheek instead of 5? And I'm like, well, I don't have HD.
Right.
But yeah, it's like seeing physically what they look like.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the other question I was going to ask you is, what led you to doing what you do now? In other words, what were you doing prior to getting into metaphysics, and how were you paying the bills? And your work history, what was that prior to coming into this full time?
Good question. I mean, I resisted doing this full time for a long time, honestly. I was doing corporate work, doing like quality control, that type of thing in a manufacturing environment for probably 7-8 years. And all the while I was kind of doing readings here and there. But still, there wasn't really anyone around me that was doing readings and making a living. So I didn't really have anyone in my life either that was sort of cheering me on to do it. So I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But it still called to me, So eventually I got into, I left the manufacturing world, and I was still doing readings, but basically part-time. And then I got into psychology because I had a psychology degree, and I really, really wanted to use it. And I was working in a psych ward helping those individuals who had severe mental illness for about 2 years. And that was that pushed my boundaries mentally, emotionally, but spiritually too. And on my days off, I would do readings. So, I was working a lot. And and I stopped at about 2014. And I just said, this is time. Something inside me says you have to do readings full time. And I kind of just literally one day just walked away and said, okay, I'm going to do this totally full time. So, I've been doing readings since 2003, but mostly part time. And it's only been about 2.5, 3 years where I can say this is my full time gig. So, and I'm happy. Every day I learn something completely new about probably the other side, maybe about my gift too, and about people. And it's very fulfilling. So I've never found a job, even as fulfilling as psychology was. I believe doing readings are far more fulfilling.
Wow, yeah. So, and this may be a silly question, but I'm still going to ask it. Running a business in metaphysics, are the stresses the same in your type of business as it is for any other business?
That's a great question. Yes. Actually, and family, I still have a mom, and she still worries, like, where are they coming from? How's this possible? How are you going to do it? What happens 20 years from now? She's wringing her hands. She thinks that, years from now I'll be just staring at the phone, kind of hoping it rings. So we have the same pressures as the business. You have to market yourself too. But, the good thing is a lot of people in metaphysics will say their spirit guides are their best marketing team. I think that's probably true. But the other thing, it's hard because it depends on where you live and how many friends or acquaintances do this type of work. That will help, or really it might slow your progress if you don't really have a lot of support. But yeah, so a lot of people, I have friends that do regular jobs or have their own businesses, and they're like, I don't know. They try to compare it sometimes. So I had a friend that said, well, it's going to be winter. You'll probably have a bad season. In fact, February was my busiest month ever for my whole career.
Wow.
So I was so I told him, it doesn't really work that way. People will be like, well, if it snows out, no one's going to come for a reading. No, not necessarily true. So there's some comparisons. The pressures of it is still there. But I think the one thing is key. Because I love it so much, that's the one thing that really I think is the fuel for my business. And I think if you don't like your business, whatever it is, if it's outside metaphysics, and you get stressed out or lose your confidence, if let's say you had a slow week or something, then I think you're more likely to not put in the energy to think of innovative ways to market yourself or bring in new clients or something like that. So I think the key is that I love it so much, and that's why it does well.
Yeah, that's with anyone that does whatever they want. If you have the passion,
sure,
it'll work for you, and that's true of anything. So
right.
let me tell you, the one thing that I've always felt was an ethical conundrum was repeat customers. When they come back for repeat readings, how do you tell people that, or do you tell people, sorry, but you're becoming a readaholic, you need to calm down, go live life, come back after something happens? How do you deal with that?
I really do tell them. For a mediumship reading, I do not let anyone come back sooner than 6 months. Sometimes they don't like that, but I say 6 months is a good time for your life to be sort of unfold itself for you, and that you don't rely on mediumship or you don't rely on a reader, like you said. Don't become a readaholic. And 6 months feels like it's a pretty good amount of time. If it's later, then I'm fine with that. But I think if you come back any sooner for a mediumship reading before 6 months, you're missing something. You have to, and there's a lot of reasons. One, like you said, you can't become reliant on readings because we're not God. And sometimes the better you get at it, people almost assume that you shouldn't make any mistakes or be wrong ever. And that's just not true. It's never going to be that way. We're never going to be 100%. The second thing is, if you miss your loved ones, which I understand that we do sometimes, of course, and you're not allowing your life to sort of unfold and live, like you said, you're not doing what they want you to do. Like spirits and loved ones in the spirit world and in heaven and the other side, they definitely want you to be happy and live this life because they know how precious it is. So you're actually kind of doing a disservice if you keep coming back. But let's say you got a mediumship reading once every 2 weeks. Well, now you're kind of saying to yourself, I doubt this. I doubt life. I doubt connection. I doubt all this. I doubt myself. And my grieving is too much that I have to hear from them. Then the spirit world will probably do something so that, it shakes you up a bit and takes stock in your life. As far as psychic readings, though, that gets a little tricky. I always say, if you're getting a reading and you want to get a follow-up or the next reading, I kind of tell them to let time go by. Let life breathe. It doesn't necessarily mean 6 months. It could be sooner, but there has to be some change. But yeah, I'm pretty adamant. I'm pretty assertive about telling people I don't let people come back right away. And, I'm fine business-wise. I don't think it affects me. So.
Well, good. Yeah, because I really think that part of what we do is that guidance as well. Mark, if it's okay with you, I'd like to bring in a caller to ask a question. It's Donna from California. Are you ready?
Sure. Absolutely.
Hi, Donna. You're on the air. How are you?
Oh, hi. Good. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you. So Mark is on the line, and what was your question?
Well, I wanted to know if any messages were coming in, and also if I'm going to meet the love of my life and get married one day.
Oh, okay. Well, Donna, the thing about it is that Mark is not doing any psychic readings on the air. The questions we're taking is about content and whatnot, but you could get a hold of Mark and set up a reading, but he prefers not to do readings on the air.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay.
That's okay. You're welcome. So I was going to say, Mark, with your gifts and abilities, what services do you provide?
So I provide mediumship, evidential mediumship readings, either in person if you're in the Chicago area, or via Skype. So if you're anywhere in the world, you can just get Skype, download it, and you can set up a reading with me. I also do intuitive or psychic readings, and everyone says, I still get this. They're like, "What's the difference?" I tell people, if you have loved ones that you'd like to hear from, get a mediumship reading. If you just want to know about your career, your love life, like to Donna who called in, her questions were, is there messages, and I'd like to know about my love life. Well, that's really a psychic reading. So I would say for her, if she was looking for something, it would be probably that. I feel like too, and hopefully this will make sense, there are people who think maybe I'll get messages from the other side just so I can get guidance about my life. And I don't really totally agree with that. The reason why spirits come through in readings is not because they want to give you advice. It's more or less because they're trying to say hello. You know what I mean? So yeah. I feel, I've had people say, well, I don't really care who comes through. I just want to know if I'm going to get the job tomorrow. And I want, like my loved ones to tell me. It's like, that is not what mediumship is all about. Will they give you advice? Yeah, they will. But the reason why it actually works is because they miss you, because they want to say hi, and because they want to tell you they love you. And the evidence is there is to prove that they are still around you. But it's really not about predictions or fortune telling or all that. Mediumship is really, it would be nice to hear from anyone, and that's sort of it. And psychic readings are really about your life. So I hope that makes sense.
Right. And, the thing about it is that I definitely understand that. And the other thing I've always felt and heard from other mediums is that your loved ones on the other side really can't tell you, things of the future or whatnot, because it's still the same person. They just happen to be on the other realm and hopefully a little smarter with the life lessons that we've learned. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. But again, a lot of people don't like that, and they're so
right.
But it's absolutely true. They'll come through and say most of the time what they'll say to me, and this is how it translates: I am who I was here. Are you really going to listen to your mom and dad about love advice? Because you didn't do that when they were alive. You see what I'm saying? So that's why I always like, we have spirit guides because we don't share this current life with our spirit guides. So we don't have a lot of privacy hang-ups. But, if mom and dad come through and you want to know about your romance life and you weren't comfortable with asking them when they were alive, it's not going to really translate, So they will give some advice, but like you said so well, they can't really. It's still the same person so much on the other side, and they're not God, so they don't know all. They're not omniscient and all that. So yeah, I totally agree with what you said.
Absolutely. And so And do you do public demonstrations, gallery readings?
I do. It's actually something that I'm really passionate about. I did one in November of last year at the end of 2015. I did one February 19th of this year, and I have a few opportunities coming up. And this is all pretty much in the Chicagoland area, where, in case people out there don't know what a public demonstration is, it's sort of a demonstration of mediumship where you'll go to an event where a medium is, and they'll read the audience, but really it's the spirit world that chooses who gets to go. It's not the medium who picks the person out of the crowd. It's really the spirit coming through, and they direct you to the area of the audience, and that's how it kind of goes. But I love it so much, and the reason why I do it is because it's a different way to sort of educate people. I think I'm a teaching medium, or at least hopefully I am, or I like to think of myself as that. And public demonstrations is, first of all, it's super challenging because you have all these different people in the room, different energies, and on totally different levels of understanding of what this is.
Yeah.
To be able to show it to a crowd of strangers, and it makes them a little bit like it makes them understand it a little bit more and what it's really all about. That's why I do it. It's really, for me, sort of to push my boundaries as a medium, for sure, because it does really push you and to your limits and beyond. But also to sort of open doors for those people who are open, but really sort of limited in what their understanding is.
Yeah.
My last event, I had someone come up to me, and this person said, I don't really believe in any of this stuff. And I'm, and it's like, 15 minutes before the event. And I'm like, oh, that's great to tell a meeting before the event. Yeah. But this person was like the first person to be read, and they're totally a believer now. And they've referred people to me. And that to me was special, because you had someone who really had no idea what this was all about. And all of a sudden, just in maybe 10 minutes, you totally changed their perspective and probably their whole life in actuality, because you opened up a door that they thought maybe wasn't possible. So for me, just in those 10 minutes, I'm like, wow, this was worth it, so yeah. So I'm going to be doing more of those.
So that sounds good. So you were talking about a level of understanding, but is that applicable to not just the audience in physical, but also in spirit? Do you think there's sometimes we have loved ones on the other side that are also on the same boat? They're like, what the heck is going on here?
Well, sometimes they make jokes to me.
Oh, they do?
Well, during mediumship. Like, I have a father that's in the spirit world, and when he crossed over, he came to me and was like, I didn't really know you can do this. Like, what's going on? That type of thing. And even in readings, I'll have some relatives that come through for clients, and they'll say, oh boy, if I was alive, I really wouldn't be into this. But thank God my niece is. Thank God my nephew's into this, because it gets me an opportunity to say hello before I meet them again. So yeah, and I do believe there's different levels of heaven, and I want to use that in quotes, because I don't think I'll ever really truly understand heaven or the other side of the spirit world until I get there. But I see glimpses, and what other mediums do describe it as sort of a worlds within worlds. And it's like, boom, mind blown. But they definitely keep growing on the other side. So yeah, they're all at different levels of understanding and their spiritual growth. And what we do here also affects them. And, the more we do positive, the more kind we are to each other, they actually vicariously grow through that too.
Right. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I was going to ask you is, how do you deal with skeptics?
Oh, great. When I was new to it, it would really throw you off. It's hard enough to kind of do this kind of work, and then a skeptic would come by and you're like, ugh. But
Yeah.
as you go on, I mean, skeptics in readings and even outside of readings, a great medium once said, if you have to defend your work or defend yourself, that means you did something wrong. So basically, I tried not to even defend what I do or why I do it, because I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm actually in it to help people. So those are those people outside it. But I have family members that don't really. They don't know what I'm doing. Like they believe I'm definitely getting information, but other times they're like, but I don't believe in a heaven, so I don't know how you can do this. But sometimes they ask me good questions, and I just ask if you're not sure, be skeptical but not cynical, because I think cynical means that you're just rude or nasty about it. But skepticism is pretty good. Healthy skepticism is, I'm not sure, but I'm open to it. I'm willing to listen. That's important. I think as a medium and as a psychic, if we don't have at least others out there saying, I don't know. If we don't have skepticisms out there, we may not grow. And sometimes the biggest skeptics will actually open up a door for our abilities or our understanding and improve us. So I do think it can be important and helpful. Not so much the cynics though.
Yeah, and that's true, because I think that when the cynicism kicks in, that's where the negativity comes in, and it just doesn't have a place really to help anyone, and that's
Absolutely.
what mediumship is all about: healing and helping.
Right.
This is Tony Valen, host of Healing from Within. You can contact me directly, Tony at TonyValen.com, or visit our website, healingfromwithin.net. Follow the show on Twitter at TVHFW. The show is also available on iTunes and YouTube. Just search Healing from Within with Tony Valen, or look for the Tony Valen channel on YouTube. We're talking to our guest, evidential medium and intuitive life coach, Mark Troy. You can learn more about Mark Troy by going to marktroymedium.com. Follow him on Twitter at MarkTroyMed. Find him on Facebook /Mark Troy Medium. Mark, when I first looked for answers to all things metaphysical, I found your YouTube channel where you discuss many topics. I want to touch on some of those topics so that the listeners and people are aware of your channel and what you're talking about. Can you give us one of the topics you talk about is tips on intuition and psychic development. Can you discuss that with us?
Sure. I think first of all, that's a really good video to first mention, because that's why my channel is there. It's really for everyone to sort of have a free informational, guide for them, because a lot of people say they're lost. And I think the starting point for everyone who's interested in metaphysics or mediumship or psychic ability, it starts with intuition. You can, and I've had people come up to me and say, well, I'm a medium and I just want to know how to be a medium. You cannot be a good medium without being a great psychic. You cannot be a great psychic without listening to your own intuition. Right. To me, the first step is sort of allowing yourself to quiet your mind, whether you want to do that through meditation or find another way, but still have to listen to your gut feeling about your life. Then I think that there's nothing more important than that. If anything, I don't believe there's going to be a lot of people that will look at my videos and then decide to do a career in doing reading. It's not for everybody, but everybody on this earth can listen to their intuition. Furthermore, they really should listen to that intuition, because I think we all have that. It's just that we always doubt ourselves, and we think too much, and we talk ourselves out of it. So my tips on there, specifically that video, is to, first of all, listen to that. What are you feeling about, a choice? Is it good? Is it a bad feeling? And then go for it. But there's a huge asterisk there. If it's totally irrational, like, someone said, let's give the example, should I jump off a bridge? And my intuition saying yes. I mean, that defies logic. So obviously,
Right.
don't do that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And yeah, but people will do that sort of thing. They'll say, "Well, my intuition said, go here when I wasn't supposed to," and it's like, well, you may be getting that confused. If it's irrational, then don't do it. But a lot of our inner knowing, our feelings that we get, are actually very right, and they're seldomly wrong. As far as tips on psychic ability or developing that aspect, I really am pretty adamant about practicing. So if you have maybe friends or family that are willing to allow you to maybe practice, whether you want to use some sort of tool like tarot cards or pendulum, or you get into astrology, or you just kind of don't use tools at all and you want to just give them what you're seeing or feeling or hearing on a psychic level. I think mostly everyone that provides a psychic reading can go look at your past a little bit, and they can see somewhat what's going on in the present, and they can guide you for the future. And that's like the foundation, I think, of most intuitive psychic readings. But I'm really big on, and a lot of people they'll come to me and say, I don't want to practice at all. I just want to hit a button. I want to hit a button and just have the ability and just have it. It's like, it doesn't really work like that. It's like a muscle. So they have to sort of work that muscle, I guess.
Yeah, I've always believed that. And I think the more, like you just said, a muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it becomes, So that's very true. Now, what about you have another, you have all your videos are very interesting, but the one I highlighted a few, and the next one I was going to ask you about was what to expect in a reading.
Yeah, so I had a lot of, I mean, doing this so long now, or I've had people with different levels of expectations about mediumship. I've had people say, like we said earlier, some people just want to know where's lost money at. Like my grandma and grandpa have this money that's hidden somewhere, and that's why I want a mediumship reading. I want to find it. It's like, no, that is not what mediumship is for, and they probably won't tell me specifically because of that. I put in there so many different tips. Some people they'll make deals, before they get a reading. They'll say, well, Grandma, tomorrow, if you're really here and if that medium is a real medium, you'll tell me that my bed is purple or my car has only 3 wheels on it. They'll make these sort of deals. And if they don't if they don't get those, then they'll say, you're not real. This really, and I learned this long ago. I was friends with a really tremendous, great medium that's been doing it longer than me. And the example was he saw a bird, or just a feather of a bird, I should say, and there's a certain color to it. And he said this, and this lady just kind of shook her head. And he's like, well, okay, that's the time, and the reading's over. And she's like, well, I didn't get what I wanted. And he said, well, what was that? And she goes, well, my grandma was supposed to tell me about this bird. And the bird color was matching that. See, he saw the feathers and the wings, and it was red, and it was supposed to be a cardinal. But since he didn't say cardinal, she thought this was useless. So a whole hour goes by, and she just wanted to look for the cardinal. But the medium was interpreting it as, well, I see red feathers of a bird, but that wasn't good enough. It's not perfect, and it's not like it doesn't really work the way we want it to work perfectly. So because we're still human. Second of all, they're in a different dimension. It's not Skype. It's not a phone call. So there's some challenges here. And third, it's not like me talking to you. It's not like, hey, how's it going? I'm Grandpa Joe, and she wants to hear about this cardinal. It's a lot of like symbols and feelings, and it's really a soul-to-soul communication. So I think if people can kind of put down their expectations and agenda and just be okay with hearing any type of information that can come through in a reading that makes sense, then they will really love it a lot more. And then you'll get some things that will surprise you. But that, I really really, when people ask me for a mediumship reading, I kind of say, you got to watch my video first. Because if you have a different level of expectation, then I'm not the medium you're looking for. There are others, too, that feel a little upset if they can't hear from a specific loved one. I try to please both worlds as best as I can. But you're never going to be able to go to a medium and always get specific spirit you want. There are very few mediums in the world that try to do that, and sometimes it works out. But, you know, we don't, the other thing is we don't dial them. Like people say, can't you just, you know, grab onto the spirit? Like, no, we don't. They have free will on the other side. I can't force them to talk to me or like me. There's a great quote from another medium that says, there is a medium for everyone, but not one medium for everyone. So you can get you can get an A+ reading from a medium. Your friend goes to that same medium and doesn't like it. But that doesn't mean that medium's bad. That means that it was a bad match. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Definitely, I agree. I mean, it's just like in this world. I mean, you meet people, and sometimes people just don't, you don't like each other, and it's nothing personal. It's just something doesn't click. So, of course, why wouldn't it happen in metaphysics if it happens in physical world? So when would it be okay for someone to receive a message or give a message? I mean, are there certain times when it's not okay?
Well, I'm not a big person that advocates you going up to strangers and giving them messages. And I've had people ask me this all the time. And they usually ask me because they see mediums on TV, and they'll show them in public, kind of going up to people. But for me, I always say, if a medium came up to me and I was in public and I was getting coffee and started reading me, I would be offended. You don't know if the person you're going up to is in grief. I mean, if they're grieving and you go up to them and it's not a good time, you might set them down a path with even more pain, because mediumship isn't for everybody. I hope to be for everybody maybe one day, but it's not, because everyone has to evolve spiritually at their own time and their own level of understanding. I think, and this is just me, but sometimes there are some mediums out there who, I don't know, they like the power or that sense of having that, and they'll be reading people, and it's really not about, they're not putting the person before their own needs, in my opinion. Just because you get some information, it doesn't mean that that's okay for you to just give it. So I feel like the good thing about having readers is that it allows people who are ready to reach out to a medium. And that way you're both sort of okay. But I have people all the time email me, well, I'm in public and I get, spirits contact me, and I don't go up to the people that I don't know, but I want to. Should I or should I not? And I'm not okay with that. Maybe if you went up to them and said, are you okay with this? But most people are not going to be, just like, would you want someone going through your wallet without you knowing? It's pretty private. Or going through your purse. Can you imagine? Can I open up your journal for you? I mean, that's like someone giving you a psychic reading without your permission. They're going and they're being intrusive without you being okay with it. So that's sort of my take on that.
Absolutely. And I do have a caller that I'm going to bring in. It's Mary in Florida. She has a question about Transfiguration. Hi, Mary. This is Tony and Mark.
Hi, Tony and Mark. I had something happen to me some years back that has always puzzled me. I have spoken to various mediums and quite a few people that I know about it. It's just still not clear to me. I had an aunt, well, she's passed now, and my mother's passed. She was visiting my mother and I about 10 years ago, and she was leaving my apartment. The next day she was going back north. And as she was getting ready to leave, she took my hand and was wishing me well and was saying goodbye. And with that, I looked at her face, and she had turned into a very ugly face witch, and even her hands and everything were one of this same character that came through. And I could no longer see her. And it frightened me terribly. I never told her this. I know that she had mediumistic qualities, and she used to do readings, and it was very frightening. And there's a second part to this, because that happened in the month of October. And in the month of January, my mother had an almost fatal stroke, her sister.
Wow.
I'm wondering, what is your take on all this?
Well, when you saw your aunt kind of do that, how long after did she pass? Just curious.
Oh, my aunt passed years down the road, just about a year ago. She was around quite a long time, and I never told her that secret. I kept it to myself. I didn't want to frighten her.
Oh, well, if she did mediumship, she probably would be, you probably would not have frightened her.
Yeah, but she didn't, it's not like she was, exposed to anything dark like that. She did TV readings, and, she had people that she would read cards for, but she never had anything dark, and that was definitely dark. It was like a nightmare. It's
hard to say, honestly. I don't feel like she was possessed or anything or a dark entity entered her at all. It could be so many different things. It could have been her holding your hand definitely did something for you, because you have empathy with you, and it could have been just an overload.
Why this dark, ugly creature come through?
Well, it could have been just an interpretation or overload for you kind of holding hands with her, and maybe it was just like a stress thing. I don't really feel like she was possessed or anything like that, honestly. And,
have you ever heard of this? Have you experienced or heard of this?
Of a moment where they'll kind of turn like that and not show up again? No. I've worked in a psych ward where I saw a lot of mental illness, obviously, and all that. And I visited probably the most haunted places in the United States. Usually, if something was evil or whatever, it wouldn't just happen and then never happen again. It would kind of still linger around her. So I just kind of feel like it might be an overload. You holding her hand and getting her energy, your energy, and then stress kind of piling on too.
I took it as a foreboding because of something bad that happened. I took it almost like a warning or foreboding.
That's probably it, because like you said, you held her hand too, which was an overload. And I think you're empathetic, and you have empathy, which means on a psychic level you can kind of feel. And I do feel like it was probably a foreboding for sure. And like you said, January, so November, December, January, your mom then had some kind of, was it a stroke, you said?
It was a near fatal stroke that she experienced. She lived 2 more years, but it was near fatal.
I'm pretty sure that was that. It was just a psychic impression and not some sort of demon or spirit coming in and, doing all that. So, and then the key thing was you holding her hand too.
Another quick question, unrelated to that. When something pops into your head, because I do get psychic impressions too, and I always have a hard time deciding whether it was wishful thinking that this thought came to mind and then it just popped in, or if I actually was getting a message. And this happened, in fact, today about a situation, and I'm thinking, did I just wish that, or did that just come in for reassurance? Was this really my intuition?
So so number one, you'll have to try to tell yourself, this is going to be the hardest step of this, that you're going to have to trust whatever you're getting, and you're got to be okay with being wrong sometimes. Mm-hmm. If you can kind of do that, then the more you get those impressions, it's going to feel different, and you'll know, hey, that's not wishful thinking. That's definitely a psychic impression. But you'll have to have almost a philosophical change within you to say, I'm okay with being wrong, but I'm going to trust whatever I get, and I'm going to go with it.
The proof you would say is in the pudding. To see if that
if it turns out to be right, then you'll know for sure. Then it's correct.
Do these things and I think, what was that? Was that real? Was that voice I heard, or those words I heard? How can I trust? So I guess I just have to wait and see.
Well, just like on my video for tips on psychic and development and intuition, practice. If you have other people around you too that you can always practice with, that would help. But the biggest thing is not to get so hung up on being right or wrong. Just kind of trusting it a little bit more, and it's almost a deeper thing. It's really the soul creates the psychic ability. The soul creates the mediumistic ability. It's not our logical conscious mind. So it's more of a deeper knowing.
Absolutely. And Mary, thank you so much for your question. I'm going to go ahead and move on to Kay in New York. She has a question about talking to dead people. Hi, Kay. You're on the air with Tony and Mark.
Hi.
Hello.
I was interested in communicating with my father. He had passed away when I was younger, and I wanted to know how or ways that I can do that, or can he help me manifest, or how can I, should I write things and look for answers? I'm just trying to figure out.
Sure. I always say he's probably going to inspire you to do it your own way. But most people, I say, if you just kind of, when you wake up in the morning, you kind of acknowledge him, say, hi, how are you? I'm thinking of you or all that. That is a big, big step. Some people get a little frustrated when they don't receive any signs from the other side about whether it's their father or whom not. But it's like a frequency. So if you can sort of remember, if you put it out there and every day get consistent with it, where you're saying, driving to the store, you say, hey, Dad, I'm here. Just sort of acknowledge him. Then he can actually communicate with you better. However, it's going to be in a different way. Like, it could be a song on the radio. It could be something you find. It could be a feeling. You might actually feel his presence. Yeah, dreams are the number one preference for spirit contact. And they really do come in our dreams a lot. However, we all live busy lives. Not all of us are dreamers. And and you kind of need a good amount of sleep too. But if you can do it your own way, you might have a mantra or some way of doing it. I don't believe people necessarily have to do a prayer or be so ritualistic about it. I think it's just they want you to acknowledge them. And then the other things you asked about, can he help me manifest, or can he help me with these other things? That's kind of up to you too. It depends on your level of comfortability with that particular spirit. Some people are not okay with their fathers helping them in any way, or some people are. So that'll be kind of up to you. But if you can just sort of acknowledge him almost every day, it will really help him sort of reach out to you. Does that make sense?
Kate, thank you so much for calling in and asking your question. Mark, we're running short on time, so I wanted to get to one of the main points I wanted to discuss with you, which is you're writing some books. Why don't you tell us about the books and what the books are going to be about?
Yeah, I'm so excited. I'm actually kind of doing one on intuition, trying to give some insight to people how they can sort of hone into their own psychic ability or their own intuition and apply it to everyday life, being kind of practical with it, because I think that's something we've kind of not, as a society, really paid attention to. We sort of ignore it, and sort of interweave my own little, stories in my biography along the way with that book. And then the second book I'm working on is it's really about mediumship or communicating with spirits, but not everyone is going to be able to be a medium for strangers, do mediumship as a profession. I do believe that everyone can receive some signs from their loved ones, and that book will help enable them to do that a little bit more, and then offer some of my experiences with that. But they're really sort of helpful guides for people. They're sort of teaching books. So those are two big projects of mine that I'm still working on and enjoying it while, during the process. So pretty excited about them.
Good. And then do you have titles for the books?
I don't have titles to announce yet. I'm still kind of debating.
Okay.
So we'll see. Yeah. Kind of going back and forth on a few of them, but not quite time yet, but we'll see.
Mark, also, I wanted to ask you before, we call it a show at the end of the show.
Yeah.
What is that? You have a video out there called Introduction to Mark Troy Medium. What is your introduction?
So I had a couple requests to say, Mark, we have a lot of these videos, but we don't know enough about you, and we want to sort of hear your story. So I made that video big, and I kind of take people through how this began for me. I live in Chicago on the South Side, and it's really a Catholic sort of environment, or where this type of thing really isn't talked about a lot, although it is very intriguing for a lot of people now that are starting to get to know me. But for me, I had my first spirit experience at the age of 3, where my grandma was there and I could see her, and all of a sudden I was communicating with her without words. But I would tell my dad this, and he would say I'm crazy and it's not true. And he definitely believed I was communicating with some kind of ghost, but he could not believe that I could communicate with his mom in heaven. He's like, that's impossible. How could you do that? So as time went on, I would, my dad was big into paranormal shows and sci-fi shows, and all those shows. I would see psychic detectives on TV when I was like 5 years old, and I was like, wow, that's cool. But like everyone else, I just went through normal grade school, high school, with not really thinking too much of it. I just assumed, maybe other people could see what I saw or could feel what I felt. But I got a reading when I was about 20 years old from a really famous psychic detective, and that changed me. I mean, he basically said, you have this gift and I can help you too. I was kind of like, I don't know. But he predicted that I would get into meditation, that I'd get into martial arts. He said all these things, and I was blown away. But since that day, I started to explore what metaphysics was. I read every book there was. I was big into Sylvia Browne, John Edwards. I was just like a sponge. I studied different religions, different spiritualities, New Age. And I did readings, I used tools. So I've tried to dabble into almost every aspect of metaphysics and mediumship and psychic abilities and all these things. But at the same time, I know I had to live, sort of that normal life, without me having normal experiences, normal jobs. There's no way I could help anybody. I mean, because I wouldn't have a frame of reference to do so. And then here I am today, doing this full time and loving every minute of it.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, Mark, I really want to thank you for being on the show and talking to us and educating us and hopefully helping people to know better and do better. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me again.
I really appreciate it. Absolutely. Our thanks to Evidential Medium and intuitive life coach Mark Troy. You can learn more about Mark by going to marktroymedium.com. Follow him on Twitter at MarkTroyMed. Find him on Facebook /MarkTroyMedium. You are listening to Healing from Within with Tony Valen here on Blog Talk Radio, airing Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central. Visit our website, healingfromwithin.net. Contact me directly, Tony at TonyValen.com. The show is also available on iTunes and YouTube. Just search Healing from Within with Tony Valen or look for the Tony Valen channel on YouTube. Thank you so much, and love and light from all of us here at Healing from Within.